Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
I'm Simon Mann.
We're at the climax now of the T20 World Cup, the last three matches in progress this week, the two semis and the final. And that was an interesting game yesterday to settle the last semi-final place between India and the West Indies. Simon, you were watching it, and as I was, though I was actually partly watching it as well as watching my team Spurs losing to Fulham. It's quite interesting kind of contrast, actually, watching a Premier League football match live and watching a T20 World Cup match on my phone. Lots of sort of seesawing emotions. I suppose I was sort of hoping West Indies might do it against India. But you said at one point that WinViz suggested that West Indies had a 73% chance of winning, but you never thought West Indies had much chance, really, did you?
Yeah, Yoz. West Indies getting flogged, Spurs getting flogged. Bad luck. You're right.
Mean, listen, relegation. I mean, look, we're not going to talk about this for too long, but relegation for a team like Spurs, I mean, it's a serious business, isn't it? Because if that happens, I'm saying they're still 4 points clear of the relegation zone or so, but it's just a massive financial thing, isn't it? Players leaving, obviously a huge drop in your TV income and sponsorship income and sponsors giving up and what I mean, it's a drastic situation for a club the size of them, and with this new magnificent ground and so on. I mean, anyway, look, let's move on. Let's talk about the cricket.
This is the Analyst Inside Football. I mean, just on that for a minute, though, the only thing is, you're right about Spurs' massive drop in revenue if they did get relegated, but they get parachute payments. They'll still have far more revenue than nearly every other championship club, and they'll be able to bankroll a promotion the following season and rebuild. Doesn't always happen, but there is a huge inbuilt advantage for teams who are relegated from the Premier League to get back up again. And it's happened before, Yoz. I can remember back in the late 70s, Spurs were relegated, and they're not doing too badly. I haven't done too badly over the years since. They actually won a competition last year. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about West Indies against India yesterday. That after about 6.3 overs, India were 59 for 2. I think this is the point where it flashed up on the screen. West Indies 73% on WinViz, India 27%. I couldn't believe it. I thought, has anyone not watched the IPL? You've got these wonderful, talented Indian batsmen, and also thought the pitch was flat, the outfield was quick, the boundaries not particularly big at Eden Gardens. Okay, they did have the pressure of the chase, but I thought, no. Okay, India under a little bit of pressure here, but surely it was 50-50 or just in their favour. So it was no surprise at all that they won that game, and there was at no point in their innings did I feel they were behind. At no point did I not think they're probably going to win this, and they actually won it with a bit of comfort. I mean, a few balls to spare, but they went into the last over, and the challenge wasn't particularly onerous for them. So I mean, well played to India, because they were the team really under pressure in that game. They're expected to get to the final, expected to win it by some, certainly by us at the start of the tournament, and so suddenly they're playing a quarter final. And they came through it. So, you have to tip your hat to them, really, because that was a pressure game.
I mean, the WinViz thing is part of CricViz, and, it's using lots of past data, as much data as it can get hold of, to make these calculations. But it's interesting because when we had our Betfair odds during the Ashes, for instance, the Betfair odds are using not only the data that CricViz uses, but also then the betting markets and factoring all that in as well. So you're not only using the original stats that say that one team is more likely to win than the other, but also then individuals making a decision on that ranking or percentage of likelihood, and then interpreting that using their own knowledge of grounds, history, individual players, bowling attacks, batting orders, etc., and then making a decision on whether they back that odds or not. So in a way, it's an even better it's better evidence, a Betfair or similar odds than CricViz or WinViz, because you've got so many more bits of data and interpretation fed into it. And as you rightly say, we knew that pitch is flat, the outfield is rapid, and reasonably short boundaries. We knew that India bat a long way down and hit the ball to all parts, and the West Indies bowlers are not that reliable. So it did look like unless West Indies got 220, and maybe the key part of that innings was the last 5 overs, where they needed to get probably 80 off the last 5 overs to get to 220, and then really that would put India under pressure. But they didn't get that. They only got about 65 off the last 5 or 6 overs, 10 and over, and the brilliance of Bumrah shining through again. Even though he went for a couple of sixes, he did nail his Yorkers, and he just sort of stopped them from that acceleration they needed.
I mean, a couple of things. One, Shea Hope at the start was a bit underpowered, wasn't he? 32 off 33 balls, and he kind of said sorry afterwards. I just had one of those days. I've hit the fielders a lot. I couldn't get the ball away, so perhaps they needed to, needed a stronger start than that. They were after the power play, they were 45 for no wicket, which is not too bad, not great, but not too bad. And they got those hitters to come as well. So you think, well, they might be able to add quickly. But yeah, I thought just under 200, it didn't feel quite enough. And India are always in the game. And the other thing about, you talk about the betting market as well, there's some very shrewd and very knowledgeable gamblers out there as well. You've got your general punters, but also on those betting exchanges as well, you've got people who actually use their own algorithms as well. So there we go. Anyway, I was surprised. Anyway, I was just surprised at the WinViz. I just thought that can't be right. To me, it didn't feel right. And India had that huge crowd at Eden Gardens behind them as well. Feverish excitement being whipped up by the man on and the woman as well on the PA. I thought it was supposed to be kind of like a neutral game. It's like an ICC match. But I mean, there was one point that it was like, "Come on, India, India," and the guy on the PA was getting them going as well. Anyway, it just seems. I think Pakistan had that issue, didn't they, in Ahmedabad in the last World Cup, the 50-over World Cup, where they were saying, "Hold on, this is supposed to be an ICC tournament," but it felt like an India home match. I mean, it already feels it is an India home match in one sense. I mean, you have the crowd behind you, but when you've got I didn't hear the PA man at any point going, "Come on, West Indies," sort of that sort of like neutral thing that it's supposed to be, because it's an ICC match, not a bilateral game. Anyway, look, they played well. Sanju Samson, we've seen him in the IPL.
I was going to say,
didn't start the tournament. Didn't start the tournament for India either, but he's come in.
I was going to say a word about Sanju Samson, actually. One of the nicest men in cricket. I mean, we say that about Chris Wokes and one or two others. By the way, Gus Atkinson was at the Fulham match yesterday. I think he must be a Fulham fan, presumably, living in that area. Gus Atkinson, the England and Surrey bowler. But Sanju Samson is one of those just lovely guys, very gentle soul, comes from Kerala, was discovered by the Rajasthan Royals at a trial up in the north of India, and then signed by them, and has very much been mentored by Rajasthan Royals. Of course, he became captain as well, and he's just that sort of. He's very kind of benign. I've met him a couple of times, and he's very, quietly spoken, very modest, very sort of, very religious person. Of course, we saw him, do the sign of the cross at the end of his innings last night. He's been kind of a bit mistreated by India because he's such an unselfish player who always, gets sent in at the top of the order, expected to just play his shots, and often gets an early dismissal because he's so committed to the team cause. He gets dropped, and then, as you said, in this tournament, not picked and so on. And then he comes back in, and he played an innings like that last night, which was, it was so regal, actually, in many ways. I mean, he's got a real range of shots. He's not a power hitter, although he can obviously hit the ball a long way, but he's a touch player in many senses. He's got a lovely kind of gentle approach to the game, smooth movements around the crease and a lovely sort of flow of the bat. He's not a powerful player, but he does hit the ball big distances with just wonderful timing and balance and transfer of weight and fast hands as well. A beautiful player to watch. Finished the game last night with an enormous six over deep mid wicket, just to sort of pick up off the stumps, and then a bunt over mid on, and you could see the emotion, the passion, the sort of great satisfaction of doing something for his team, but also something for himself, actually, in that performance, 97 not out. Just wonderful to see, and just great for a lovely person, a fantastic person of cricket, to see them come through like that.
He described it as one of the best days of his life, or if not the best day of his life, to win a World Cup quarter-final effectively. He hit 12 fours. You mentioned that he's not a big hitter. 12 fours in his innings of 97 not out. And actually, in their innings, I was looking at this, just sort of breaking it down. They hit 25 fours. 25 fours in their innings, and only 6 sixes. West Indies hitting 10 sixes and 14 fours. You think of West Indies being, big hitters. Perhaps even by their standards, 10 was perhaps not quite enough last night. So 116 runs in boundaries for the West Indies, 136 runs in boundaries to India. I just thought West Indies, they bowled a bit wide, and they fed that cut shot. They fed that shot through the offside for Sanju, Samson. I was thinking about this. I've been contemplating it over the last day or so. Do you think there's a lot of strategy in T20 cricket, isn't there? And there's a lot of variation. Bowlers, you've got to bowl your slower ball, bouncer. You've got to bowl your wide ball, your wide full ball, all sorts of things. Actually, I'm in Milan. I was on commentary with him the other day, and he was talking about some bowling into the hip of, I think might have been Aidan Markram when he was batting, and he had 2 men. The field bowler had 2 men on the leg side boundary. He said, and it looked as though they weren't particularly good balls, but he was bowling it into the hip, so the batter was nudging it away, or couldn't manoeuvre it away any more than the single out to the 2 fielders at deep mid wicket and deep square legs. So you've got all those types of ideas in your bowling that you're trying to do. And they didn't look great deliveries because they were kind of angled in. They looked sort of easy balls to hit. And sometimes, of course, the batter would try and pick them up over deep backward square leg. And he was saying, now that's a plan. You're trying to get him off strike with a single to one of your 2 fielders in the deep. That was in the power play. So you have all these variations. Would it just be better? I mean, I'd love to see the experiment if you just said to a team, for 20 overs, just bowl straight. Just try to hit the off stump or middle and off stumps every single ball. Okay, you might better bowl a slower ball. You would fiddle around the lengths a bit, but just bowl straight. What do you think would happen? What do you think would happen if you did that? Is that just naive?
No, I don't think it is naive, but I think it's an interesting idea, and it may turn out to be something that teams try. Actually, I think back to I always go back to this game, the 1989 NatWest final, in which I bowled the last over, and obviously we lost. But the balls that were most successful were the ones I bowled straight at the stumps, and they couldn't score much. But I went with the risk reward. Potential reward of a slower ball. And the trouble is, when you bowl slower balls, it's a different action. You either bowl a leg cutting slower ball, like a leg break, so your arm is coming across the ball, or an off break, or a back of the hander. And generally, there's a different trajectory in the way you release the ball. Certainly if you're putting spin on the ball, your wrist is coming across the line of the delivery. So there is a likelihood or a possibility that ball will be offline because it's coming out of your hand in a different way. Perhaps not with the back of the hand one, because you're still releasing that seam up and the ball is potentially coming straight down. But with the slower balls, which are spinners, which are cutters, the ball is coming out in a different way. So often it lands off the stumps, as my slower ball did, which Neil Smith hit for 6, because it gave him the space and the room to hit the ball. And I think that is often the case. I mean, I was watching last night, the West Indians when they bowled slower balls. Sharma Joseph, for instance, bowled a couple of sort of straight deliveries, and then he tried the slower ball, and it went wide to the left-hander, and who put it away, Tilak Varma. And the same happened to Jason Holder. He's trying to bowl straight in at the stumps. When he bowled his slow ball, it went wide. And I think Sanju Samson was able to free his arms and flash it away through the offside. I agree with you that it would be worth a trial, and I've got a bit of evidence for going with just the straight deliveries for perhaps one match, or I don't know, one tournament, because there is this video that I was watching the other day on YouTube, which is a Red Bull promotion. And just to give you a bit of context, this is set up in some part of India, and it's two cricketers, Rahul, India, and Ben Stokes. It was done about 6 or 7 months ago, before the Ashes. And their task is to hit lots of balls off a bowling machine from different locations. Rahul is stationed on the top of a big juggernaut, a big truck. And the bowling machine is 12 yards away, feeding him straight deliveries on off stump on a length, and he has to try and hit them back straight. And the idea is that every time he hits one off the top of the juggernaut, they measure where it landed back over the bowling machine's head, if you like. And then the truck moves to where that ball landed, and he hits the next one. And he tries to see how many shots it takes him to get the truck to move a kilometre down this sort of racetrack. And it took him about 15 shots or something, or maybe more, 20 shots. Now, Stokes was located on a ramp in the middle of a lake, and he was fed balls from a bowling machine, and he had to try and hit them straight back over the machine onto various discs floating in the water about sort of 50 to 60 metres away. And every time when he hit a disc, that disc lit up, and then he had to hit another disc. And there were sort of 6 discs, all in a sort of straightish line back over the bowling machine's head, if you like, 50 to 60 metres. It took him, I'd say, probably 50 balls to hit these discs, because there were so many mishits. And the bowling machine was bowling at, 72 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour, on a length, straight, every ball. So he knew exactly what was coming. And there were lots of miscues. And Ben Stokes has hit more sixes in Test cricket than anyone in history. Admittedly, his T20 record isn't as good, but he's a strong hitter at the ball, isn't he? And he was mishitting them, and so was Rahul as well, on the top of the juggernaut. I mean, odd circumstances, but in a way, the evidence.
You're not kidding.
No, but the evidence was quite clear that you do mishit them quite regularly. Obviously, the analysts and coaches feel that varying your pace and trajectory and length is the way to is the way to restrict the scoring. But the proof is that scores until this tournament, where the pitches in some places have helped the bowlers a bit more, the scores have been going up certainly in the IPL, haven't they? So, I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's a theory, isn't it, that no one has actually put into practice?
It was just a thought, and there might be analysts and cricketers who scoff at it and say, well, it's just too predictable. Your batters will cotton on to what's happening. You've got to have this variation. And look, of course, you're going to be clobbered at certain points. And that's the point, though, isn't it? A bowler knows when they enter an over, there's every chance that they might be hit for a 4 or 6 in the over, however good they are. Bumrah, gets hit for 4s and 6s, but it's kind of like the percentages. And I just wonder whether, over the course of an innings, if you just had that discipline to try to bowl straight, how it would work out. And of course, the other thing as well, and you're right to point this out. You were right to point this out before we started, that bowlers are not machines. So you ask them to bowl straight, and they might not be able to bowl straight. You say, well, hit the top of the middle and off. We've seen those bowl outs, haven't we?
Mm.
That bowlers bowl bouncers or bowl wide, or they just under pressure they can't do it or whatever. But anyway, look, so you're going to get some wide balls, you're going to get some bad balls, but as a sort of general idea, just really concentrate on one spot and just don't go away from it. I'd like to see a team try it anyway and see what happens. You probably need to try it more than once because to have that sort of bigger sample size. Anyway, just something that struck me, as Sanju Samson was getting balls wide off stump, which he was carting,
Yeah.
through the offside of the boundary last night. Shamar Josie was spearing some down the leg side. I'm sure he wasn't trying to do that, but they were easy balls as well. Just clipped away, fine leg up inside the circle. Just run in and have it in your mind. I'd like to see
Yeah.
the experiment.
Yeah. One of the great things about Sanju Samson actually is he has a range of shots. He played one shot off Roston Chase where he just glided the ball from off stump behind square on the offside, just a little sort of steer. And yet, he also bunted back the ball back over the bowler's head and things. So he has a finer, a broader repertoire than some players actually, which I think is something to India's favour in looking ahead to the semi-final. But just one other thing about bowling, I agree with you about the idea of concentrating on the stumps every ball. Of course, one thing that does affect bowlers, and the reason why they're not robots, is how you land. You land just slightly on the edge of the hole where your foot is consistently landing, and your body is completely out of sync as a result, in minute sense, but it has a major impact on how the ball comes out. You'll hear someone like Stuart Broad talking about, his own career, and that if your foot just lands slightly differently at the crease because your run up has been, 2 centimeters to the left of normal, and you land on the edge of the hole that you dug or someone else has dug, it feels weird, and the ball comes out completely differently, or can do. So that's one of the reasons why you do get this variation of line length, even when you are trying to bowl straight. Anyway, it's a good thought. So obviously England are going to be playing India in Thursday's second semi-final. Let's take a quick break, actually, and we'll talk about that after. Okay, so it's Monday morning, and the 2 semi-finals of the T20 World Cup, Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, South Africa, New Zealand. Thursday, England against India in Mumbai. The first of those semi-finals at Eden Gardens again, Calcutta. Such a rapid outfield there, isn't it? And South Africa, who've played a lot of their matches actually in Ahmedabad up to now. So the sort of form ratings of those two teams in tournaments, how do you reckon that goes?
Well, head to head, they actually haven't played each other that much in T20 cricket over the last few years. So there was a competition in Zimbabwe last year where they played against each other 3 times, and New Zealand won all 3 matches. But it's a very different South African side. They got through to a final. It was a tri-series from memory. They got through to the final. New Zealand won the final by 3 runs, but I reckon only 2 of South Africa's current team are actually in this team, Brevis and Ngidi, and that's it. So not much to go on there, because earlier in the tournament they played each other, and South Africa won on the chase with a degree of comfort. They look the strongest side to me. They look like a machine. They look like the most likely winners. The doubts over Matt Henry coming back, not least because he's gone off for the birth of his second child, not least because of all the plane chaos that's going on around the world. And can he actually get back? It depends on the route back, I suppose. Normally they fly to the Middle East and then go to India, short hop back to India. So they've got that to sort out, and it's a bit of a turnaround for him, short turnaround for him.
They should get in a private plane. I reckon he's so valuable to them.
Yeah, well, there might be a cost involved in that. Not a huge amount of money. There's not stacks and stacks of money in New Zealand cricket. It's all thing India might be able to do, I think, but perhaps and not New Zealand. So the head-to-head in T20s between the two sides, New Zealand have won 7, South Africa have won 12 overall, but that goes back a long way. And of course, you've got different players now. They famously met in a World Cup semi-final before in 2015 at Eden Park rather than Eden Gardens. 15, where Grant Elliott hit Dale Steyn for 6 right at the end of the match to send New Zealand to the final. It was one of the great occasions. I actually felt a bit sorry for South Africa that night because their innings was affected by rain where they were going really well, and that the innings was reduced. And I think rather than getting 400 as they might have been able to do if the innings had been allowed to go its natural distance. They were rather restricted at the wrong time. And still set a challenging total, but Eden Park is a postage stamp of the ground. And so New Zealand were able to chase it down, albeit under pressure, getting 298 they needed to win the game with just a handful of balls left. So look, I think South Africa favourites, aren't they? And New Zealand have been, decent enough in this tournament. They crumbled a little bit under pressure against England the other night, but they're a decent unit, and that's why they're in the semi-finals. And it's not, the four semi-finalists are not unexpected. I think we picked three of them, didn't we? I just backed Afghanistan to beat New Zealand, as it happened in the group stages. New Zealand beat Afghanistan, so it's New Zealand who are there. I would expect South Africa to win, but New Zealand, they are an admirable team.
Yeah, and I think the thing with South Africa actually is that they've got a lot of depth with their batting, of course, and we've talked about this before, that the batting depth and the power that a team like South Africa have down at sort of 6 and 7, or 5, 6, 7, really. David Miller at 5, and then other very powerful strikers of the ball, Tristan Stubbs, who's played some key innings and seems quite nerveless coming in at 6 and 7. But I actually think their bowling is the key to it, and I've been really impressed with Lungi Ngidi, whose slower balls no one seems to be able to play. We talked about changing of pace, and is that valuable or not? I mean, it undoubtedly is in his case, because he bowls this. He's a big thrusting character, isn't he? He's capable of bowling 90 miles an hour, but he comes up and with this big sort of burly chest and flings his arm over, and the ball comes out at 72 miles an hour, and he does a particular motion with his wrist, which actually Deep Dasgupta was talking about on one of these shows, where he actually really uses his wrist to bring the ball across and put a lot of spin on it, and it dips as it comes down. And because he's got quite a fast arm, batters just don't read this slower ball at all, and they see it come out, and they think, oh yeah, I can hit that one over mid-off, and suddenly it hasn't arrived. And that's really been effective, and he's very good at controlling that ball as well, and getting the length right as well. He's a key man. Obviously, they've got a left armour. They've got Marco Jansen, that good variety. New Zealand used to have Trent Bolt, who performed that role and was really valuable, but no more. And then they've got Rabada, and a good spinner in Maharaj as well. So they've got very good mix of bowlers. They've got Markram, who can bowl his off spin to the left-handers. So they've got a really good mix of bowlers in that attack. A good bit of pace, good bit of change of pace, a left arm spinner, a left arm over. I really like the variety, and I think that's going to be a key for them.
Feels like with South Africa, their time has come. They've always been not quite team in ICC tournaments in the past, but of course, winning at Lords against Australia in the World Test Championship final, okay, that was Test match cricket, but that was a significant step forward for South African cricket. So they've got over that. They've won a big tournament now, and it's not all the players that are in this team played in the World Test Championship final, but there's a strong core. Yeah, this feels like their opportunity. They are the favourites. And they're going to have a tricky game in the final. I think, especially if it's India in front of their home supporters, 100,000 of their home supporters in Ahmedabad. But then that's gone wrong before in the past, hasn't it? When they played Australia in the 50 over World Cup final, you can never 20 over cricket semi-final, final. Can't guarantee anything. South Africa look to have the pieces, but they're a very well oiled machine. Which is not to discount New Zealand, but I would be a bit surprised if New Zealand were able to take down South Africa in the first semi-final at Eden Gardens. Because the other thing as well, a little bit, yours, depends on the dew factor. Something we haven't mentioned last night. India batting second. There was some greasiness around.
Yeah.
And both captains wanted to bat second, so the toss might be important as well. There is that factor. So if New Zealand were to win the toss and bat second, then that might go in their favour. Then I suppose the onus would be on South Africa to get a really imposing score and effectively bat or try to bat New Zealand out of the game. Which brings us to the second semi-final. England against India, old foes and familiar foes actually at this stage of an ICC T20 tournament, because it's happened on the previous two tournaments. Happened in Providence in Guyana, where India won comfortably, dominated England, easy win inverted commas, and then previous game in Adelaide where England hammered them by 10 wickets, and probably pound for pound England's best ever T20 performance. They've actually reserved two of their best white ball performances for World Cup semi-finals. 2019 Edgbaston against Australia, where they played wonderfully well to win, and then I thought Adelaide in Australia when they won that game by 10 wickets. Butler and Hales smacking India around, 10-wicket win. I mean, that's thanks for coming, isn't it? Win a World Cup semi-final by 10 wickets. That was fabulous. So those are the two sort of recent semi-finals. You go back in the day, I was going back to 2015 50 over World Cup, back famously to 1987 when these two teams met in Mumbai in the World Cup final, the World Cup semi-final, the longer version, when England lost to Australia in the final ultimately, where Graham Gooch swept India to defeat with that 100. But that was 50 over cricket. This is 20 over cricket. How do you see it? Just very quickly, England have lost 6 of their last 7 T20 matches against India in India.
Yeah, and all the stats say it's going to be tough for England, don't they? Look, Mumbai is also not a place that they cherish particularly. I'm thinking particularly of that match against South Africa in the 50 over World Cup in 2023 when South Africa got 400 and England for some reason decided to field first in about 49 degrees and 100% humidity, and all the players were virtually dying by the end of the fielding session, which resulted in South Africa getting a huge score. So I don't think they'll be sort of particularly enamored by playing in Mumbai. I just feel one area England have a bit of a kind of a weapon is Archer. I just think that the Indian batters against real pace look a bit susceptible. Against West Indies pace, which isn't particularly considerable now, they look fine. But I reckon Archer, I mean, all right, he's only got 4 overs and he'll probably only bowl, say, 2 overs at the start or even 3. But I just think he might get up their noses a bit and he might just give them a bit of hurry up and they might just get some early wickets with Archer. But it's about how the other bowlers back him up. Rashid in Mumbai might go the distance. It won't turn very much. Small boundaries, obviously Indian batters, a lot of left-handers. He does bowl the googly very well against them, but I think they've got his measure, and he'll probably not be a sort of reliable wicket-taking influence against India in Mumbai. So who else? What other bowlers are going to stand up against that sort of batting onslaught that India could provide? That'd be my worry. Is I think England's batting should handle the Indian bowling pretty well, and they've got to get, if England bat first, they'll have to get well over 200 because I just don't see them defending anything under sort of 220. What about you?
Well, I think you're the analyst. I think you've analysed it pretty well. I mean, those would be my concerns about England. They're bowling against India's batting. You might say England's batting against India's bowling. It's kind of like a sort of 50-50 game, but I think the other way, I think India, hold the advantage, and someone's going to from England is going to have to play a special innings, probably either batting first or on the chase to even it up, if you like. Yeah, I do. I've always feared for England's bowling in this competition, especially against the absolute elite teams. They came up against the West Indies in Mumbai and were flogged a bit, and their batting actually failed that night. I thought it was a good score West Indies made in the mid 190s. England have beaten some ordinary opposition in this World Cup. They did beat New Zealand the other day, which was a good win, albeit England made the point England weren't playing under the same pressure that New Zealand were playing under because England had already qualified. If England win this match, it will be a stunning victory. Whatever the margin, if it's a super over or 1 run or 1 wicket, it'll be a stunning victory because India in their own backyard, England struggle and they They struggle in T20 cricket against India. They've won only 6 of the last T20 T20s against them. So, I mean, in a way, it's probably a good position to be in, isn't it? That you're underdogs
Underdogs.
and quite significant underdogs as well. But it also means that you're underdogs for a reason, which is that the team you're playing against is probably an all-round a more superior side, albeit you have got some champion cricketers in your own team, which if it's your day, then it can go your way.
And just one other thing, I suppose, fielding. India's fielding has looked fallible, and they've dropped a few catches, and they're low down in the sort of fielding rankings. They've obviously got some really good fielders, but they don't look as quite as athletic and quite as flawless in the catching as England are. England have got some brilliant fielders, and hardly a weak link, really. Rashid used to be, but isn't anymore. So that could be one area where England could gain an advantage if they take a couple of absolutely stunning catches and India drop a couple of theirs. That could sway the balance. You sort of feel like if they drop Harry Brook, on 20 or something, and he goes on to get a ridiculously fast, brilliant 80, that could just sway the balance. But it's quite a big if. I mean, India just have so much depth. And they do have. It'd be interesting to see who they pick actually for the bowlers, won't it? Because they've sort of chopped and changed their attack a little bit. And Chakravarti hasn't had quite the impact that perhaps everybody thought he would. He's the number one ranked T20 bowler in the world, and he hasn't had an amazing tournament. And South Africa definitely got after him and worked out a way of playing him off the back foot, hitting him down the ground and forcing him to pitch it up a bit fuller and then hitting him back over his head. That's a good strategy. So maybe England will borrow that. Will they play Kuldeep Yadav? Probably not, actually, in Mumbai, where it doesn't turn much. So they'll concentrate more on their sort of Axar Patel, spinner, and obviously Bumrah and Arshdeep Singh, the other left arm. They'll probably go sort of fairly seamer dominant, their attack. So, I mean, it's sort of, I suppose, what do we do? Is it 60% India, 40% England? Do you see it like that?
Yeah, something like that. Probably a little bit more in favour of India. So
maybe.
we're all looking at South Africa India final, which is where we started. So that means it almost certainly will be an England New Zealand final.
No, we get our predictions right most of the time. We're badly wrong with the Ashes, but anyway.
Well, you were no.
I was.
No. You were badly wrong with the Ashes. Yeah, yours. I went 3-1 Australia at the start. And you went about 5-0 England or something, or was it 7-0 England? Something ridiculous like that. Look, I think most sage observers, dependent observers as well, of this semi-final line would go for a South Africa India final, which is kind of where we started as well, wasn't it? I think at the start we said this felt like the most likely final. It's still on. But as we all know, someone can stand up on the day. Someone can crumble under pressure. It can get away from you very quickly in a little sequence of the game. It didn't get away from India yesterday, so they played superbly under pressure, batting under pressure, I thought. And it was West Indies who felt the heat of the Calcutta night and felt the passion of the home supporters as well, and the brilliance of Sanju Samson. I'm really looking forward to it. See how England stand up against that potential onslaught on Thursday. First things first, though, New Zealand against South Africa in Calcutta at Eden Gardens. The tournament it's not been that long actually, and it's built to a climax. I think it's been a good tournament so far. And what would be great is to have two thrilling games. I thought yesterday was a decent enough game, wasn't it? What we haven't talked about yet, Jos, to finish, actually, just reviewing the weekend's action, South Africa having a relatively routine win against Zimbabwe, but that sort of slightly balmy Sri Lanka-Pakistan match on Saturday in Palakelly, where Pakistan had a target within a target to qualify. Sri Lanka at one stage, it looked as though they were going to fail to get the 148 they needed to knock Pakistan out. And then they very nearly won the game. They very nearly got over 200 to win the game. It was a ridiculous last over. They went 4-6-6-6 from Shanaka. And then he had to hit 6 off the last 2 balls. It was a dot ball, and then I thought the last ball of the match was a wide. It should have been one run, bowl it again, but the umpire decided it wasn't. I mean, I thought that was a really tough call on Shanaka. I mean, ultimately, it didn't matter. Disappointment for the big crowd that turned up at Palakelli, and Pakistan won the game by 5 runs. But I thought it was just a bizarre, absolutely bizarre last over. They wanted 28, nearly got them, and should have been given the opportunity, to have one more go at trying to hit a 6 or a 4 off the last ball. Anyway, these games can be just on a knife edge, can't they?
That's the whole point of them, in a way. I mean, that is the point of them, and I think there'll be a lot of detractors of T20 who say it's not traditional cricket, but it's a bat and a ball, and it's runs and it's wickets, and they've often come to, especially in this tournament, to exciting conclusions. I mean, just think of that extraordinary game, South Africa-Afghanistan, with the 2 super overs and stuff. So I applaud the players. I think they've put on a great show, and as you say, the last 2 semi-finals, the 2 semi-finals, promise a lot of entertainment and excitement. And we'll be back after the second of those 2 matches, England-India, to review how they went.